Hello and welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for another session of this very special event, The Sacred Wound as a Portal to Your Awakening. This is an event where you will learn some of the most amazing mystical secrets from people who have been walking this path of their spiritual journey, amazing healings, incredible transformations, and they want to share their stories and gifts with you. My name is Charlie Giles, and I am honored to be your host for this very powerful wisdom sharing event. But before we begin today's session, I would like to do an acknowledgement to country, which is an Australian Aboriginal custom for when two or more people come together. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands we are meeting on today and thank them for their continued custodianship of the many lands, seas, and waters that we all have between us. I would also like to thank and acknowledge our elders, past, present, and emerging, and thank them for their guidance and their wisdom that they continuously provide for us. Thank you. Today's session, we are talking to a very special guest, Kevin Humphrey, also known as the English Mystic. Kevin shares the gifts of healing and teaching, melding the modalities of being a Reiki master and shamanism. He is a nature-loving mystic with a very special connection and love for dragons, which he is going to share with us today. So please welcome Kevin, the English mystic, for today's topic, Waking the Dragon Within. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, nice to see you.
Nice to see you again too. Thank you so much for joining us. It's such a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.
I thought the best place to start would be to kind of, invite your story as to how you got to be doing what you're doing now, perhaps a little bit about where you're at and how you got there, just so that everyone can, connect with this story.
Cool. Yeah, I'm Kevin Humphrey. I'm the English mystic, and like many people, as a youth, I had lots of mystical things going on in my life. I used to see things, and people would say, "Shh, don't say too much." And then I became normal, and I moved into corporate technology. So I worked in that for 38 years, and probably maybe a decade ago, I started feeling this calling to do something different. Like you've gone up the career ladder and it's not quite where you thought it would take you. You get there and you go, is this it? And it's a bit lonely. We've got horses, and they were getting fairly mature, and they started getting a bit arthritic. And I saw a lady doing something, putting her hands on her horses, and she wasn't like cleaning it or anything. I was like, what's she doing? So I asked her, she said, I'm giving it energy healing. I was like, oh, that sounds good. So I was like, how do I learn that? So she put me in touch with a teacher, and I learned Reiki, and I got addicted to it. So I went all the way through to Reiki Master, just literally to help our horses. And they're now 32, which is 96 in human years, and 28. So they're doing well on it. They get it whenever they need it, or sometimes I just practice on them. And that opened up energy healing. And from there, I moved through to lots of different modalities. Like you try them all out, don't you? And then shamanism came along. And when you get that feeling in your heart, like this is right for me. I just got that, and so 5 teachers later, and half a decade later, that's what I do now for a living. I ran it in parallel for a while with my technology job, like you do, to make sure it was going to work. And then I took that leap of faith, as you do, into the darkness, and like, oh, is it going to work? That was 13 months ago that I became a full-time Reiki shamanic healer. And then in the last few months, I've realized that it's nice to teach people to fish. So rather than just healing people, I teach people the healing modality of shamanism, and so they can heal themselves and hopefully go on to heal others as well. So yeah, that's a sort of a short, synopsis of my 57 years on the planet in this body.
Yes, it's always hard when someone asks you to, give a little brief interlude. There's just so much, I'm sure, like the same. But thank you. That's a great kind of way of describing how you got to where you are, and taking that leap of faith. I know it's a very scary thing, but I'm so glad that you did. That's fantastic. So So then in comes the dragon. So you need to tell us
Mhm.
more about that, because that's very exciting. I know there'll be people that want to hear about the dragons. So how did that happen?
That happened in this reality. In April 2017, I was out on a ride on my horse. She's called Fortune's Favourite, or they've got a stable name. She's called Fave. And yeah, afterwards I worked out how many times I'd ridden her, and I say I'm her human rather than she's my horse. And it was like 4,802 times or something that we'd ridden together over the years. And so we were out on our normal hack where we used to sort of leave the farm and go through this gully, and then there's a huge big field, and we used to like just gallop around there for half an hour, come back completely tired and sweating, both of us, and just walk back. And this time, for some reason, she wouldn't go past this place in the field, which she'd been past hundreds of times. And I was like, bit strange, something spooking her. So rather than force her past it, I went the long way round, and we did our galloping around and enjoyed ourselves. And we walked back with the rain nice and loose. And I thought, oh, we'll go back past that spot and see what's there. Maybe there's a sheep hiding in the bush or something. And we got there, and she was like, I am not going through there. I was like, okay, that's a bit strange. So I was like, I gave her a little kick. So come on. And all she did, she never goes backwards. She doesn't like going backwards. She backed up 10 paces, and I'm like, whoa, what, what's this? So I'd sort of done a bit of energy stuff, and I was thinking maybe there's an energy there that she doesn't like, and us humans see 1% of the spectrum and hardly hear anything, and the rest of it, animals can see a lot more than we can. So I just sort of did the pathetic thing like, who's there? Like you do, a bit worried something's going to pop out, a monster or something. So, and I thought, no. So I sort of took my courage from my solar plexus and like, right, okay, who's there? I was like, I sound a bit stupid. Like, no one's watching, so it's fine, just my horse. And then something sparkled, and I was like, uh-oh. And then it was like water and sparkles, and I thought, what's that? I watched it, and it went like this. I was like, that looks like a tail of a lizard. Okay, but it's huge. On a sec, and then it went, and it was like a back leg, and then a wing, then a torso, then a front leg, then a neck, and then this huge head. And it was like sideways to me, so I could just see one eye. And I looked at it for like a millisecond, and because it had become fairly solid now, my horse was like utter panic. So in that millisecond, she does a 180 degree turn. I like, whoa, almost fall off. And I'm just thinking, I've been working too hard. I'm seeing things. But I was like, my horse is seeing it as well. So she was out of control. We galloped across the field, got back, and couldn't get through the gate. Somebody let us in and said, what's she seen? I said, a monster. I didn't want to say it was a dragon. I was like, I didn't say anything to anyone for like 3 days. And then I told my wife, and she's like, what if a horse saw it? And I told my coach, and he was like, well, must be real. So that was my introduction to dragons. And then I found other people that didn't think I was totally crazy, and explained that they use their dragons in healing, and that dragons can come into our reality, though normally you can't see them. It's very rare. So yeah, that just opened up a great big rabbit hole, or dragon hole, I should say. And I deep dived in, and yeah, that was the start of it.
That's amazing, and it's so exciting. And what an experience! What an experience!
Mm.
And it's something like that that's so real to you that makes it that you can't be talked out of it. It's not like someone could say, "Oh, I don't know, Kev. You think maybe." You're like, "No, it." I'm sure you did that to yourself anyway.
I did. I second guessed
Yeah,
myself for a few days, and then
yeah.
I was like, "Well, my horse has seen it, and
Your
she's
horse is
acting out of instinct." So
yeah.
yeah, I did see it, and yes, that's what. And I looked it up on the internet, and I found it was a water dragon.
Wow.
That's why it was so sort of shimmering. But yeah,
Oh,
it
amazing.
decided to appear in this reality, which was
So, how then do you go to now working with them? I mean, that's, a big step there. So you've gone from seeing one and realizing they're real. Now you make the connection and now you work with them. So how
yeah.
does that work?
Well, the next step was that I explained it to a lady that I was actually on a conference, and it was about property development and all the rest of it. And as an entrepreneur, I've got my finger in lots of pies, and there was someone there, and they said, "Oh, she's a shamanic teacher," and I sort of heard about what shamanism was because I was doing my Reiki at the time, and she actually came and sat at the same table at me at lunchtime, and you just start chatting, don't you? And then she started talking about some healing she'd been done recently. And I was like, "Oh, that's really interesting." I said, "How does that work?" So she started explaining it, and then she looked at me. She said, "I'm going to talk about dragons." And I was like, "Are you?" "Yes." So she started talking about dragons, and I told her my story. She's like, "Oh wow, something made me sit at the table with you." And then I was like, "All right, okay." That's what dragons are useful for, that they're useful in healings. And then I just learned lots about dragons, and that's one of the reasons I moved into the sort of shamanic side, because in Reiki it's very powerful, Reiki, and some people do use spirit guides, but in shamanism you use spirit guides a lot, and that's where I use the dragons. So I use them in the healings, I use them for protection. I use them for when I go for a drive. Like I went at the weekend, I went up to my parents', which is a 300-mile drive around motorways, and there's lots of mad drivers on the road. So I've got three main dragons. I've got Agatha, Sophia, and Georgie, and I asked them to come with me. So I tell one of them flies ahead, one above, and one behind, just to give me protection. And it works. It's a bit like that time when you say, "Find me a parking space." If you truly believe it will happen, it's there when you arrive, isn't it? And I often arrive just after there's been a crash or something, and if I'd been there 10 seconds earlier, it would have been me. So I always felt that they're protecting me. And powerful spirit guides, that's for sure. And obviously they're so huge that just gives you courage. So if I'm going to go into any situation where I might be afraid, then I ask them to come and lend me their courage, and I imagine them sort of standing beside me. That just centers you, and it's very powerful. And then in the healings, they're very strong. So lots of people nowadays are being attached to by what we call entities. And entities are just things that live in this reality, that live off of the energy that we humans output. They're not evil or anything, they just live off us. Like a flea lives off a cat, maybe, from the blood. There's some entities, and they often come to you when you're sick or your energy is a bit low. And often they're actually helping you at the beginning. So maybe you break your leg and they help your leg, but then they don't leave when you're healed, and they actually suck your energy. And the dragons are very good at persuading, as you could imagine, them to ideally leave peacefully. If not, then there's a little bit of a kerfuffle, and the dragons, of course, always win. You can't take on three dragons, and they just take it away. It's not destroyed; it's taken to live somewhere else where it's not affecting humans. So powerful creatures.
Yeah, amazing. I love that. Just the visuals that you're giving me. Driving down the highway with your three dragons escorting you. So I'm thinking just with a little bit of the theme of the summit, and the sacred wound, and how people are coming to you with healing. And I love that you've brought up the fact that we do get stuck with some entities and the things that like feeding off the energies that come from perhaps our wounds, whatever that wounding represents. Can you go a little bit more into that, maybe perhaps what experiences you've had and how you see that working?
I mean, my story, my sort of first wound, the dark night of the soul, was 2 decades ago. I was in technology. My career was going really well, and the internet came along. It was just after 2000, and the company I was working for were a bit backwards, like, this internet thing's not going to work. And I was like, I think you're wrong. So I did that leap of faith, my first big one, and I left my corporate job that I've been in for 14 years. That's when I was sort of like head of technology and everything, and I joined at one of those startups at .com, and it was amazing. I loved it. It was the most enjoyable year ever in technology. And then what was expected of the internet boom was about a tenth of what they thought it would be. So it went boom, lots of investment, and then completely went bust. And myself and the whole company were made redundant or let go of. So were thousands and thousands of other technology people. So I found myself unemployed, and that there was no prospect of a job, because everyone I knew was in contact was like, there's no roles going, mate. It's just it's dead at the moment. You need to probably do something different for a while. And quite a lot of my friends ended up being sort of taxi drivers and working in the shops and all that, just to stay alive. And I did the same sort of thing. I bought weightlifting machines and put a little bit of a price and sold them on eBay, for a while, and sold all those little amazing little things just to keep going. But at the time, my girlfriend wasn't happy that I didn't have a job, so she chucked me. So I was now houseless as well. My brother at the time was moving 300 miles north to Yorkshire, so I went with him, and for a year I lived with him. And then after that, I managed to get a job. I couldn't get a job back at the grade I was used to, so I was earning a third of what I used to earn, and in a place I didn't know anyone. All my friends were down south in London. I was in Yorkshire, and I just had this moment one day. I was in the shower, and my whole reality, I felt it just shifted. It was something happened. It was like I was in debt by quite a lot with my credit card. Something just happened. I just felt, I was like, what was that? And I didn't feel right. I was just like, my energy just collapsed. I spent the next 10 days just in bed. I got up 1 hour a day to have a drink of water, and I went and saw my horse, and I went back to bed. And I was like, what's going on? Am I dying or something? And my energy was just so low. And the only reason I got through it is because that 1 hour a day, go and see my horse and just give her a cuddle. And yeah, I came out the other side of it, and I was like, what was that? What was that? Like, there was just so many everything that had ever gone wrong in my life just showed itself to me. And I was like, this is weird. It's like my life is playing back to me. It's like when people say when they're almost dying, there's an accident, their life flashes before them. Well, I did it over like 10 days, almost 2 weeks. And yeah, so that was my first dark night of the soul. And it wasn't nice, and I felt ashamed that I couldn't actually tell anyone that I was going through it, because it was just undescribable. Yeah, and there's been a few since. I think once you've gone through the first one, you see that you can survive it, and it's just a moment. But when I got through to the other side, I felt like I'd pulled myself out of a dark well. And I thought, you should have some pride in that. And having that pride, next time I fell in the same well, it was easy to pull myself out, because I'd done it already. And some people have dark nights of the soul that last longer. I understand that. My one was quite short, really. But yeah, and since then, because I've got into energy healing and the rest of it, I understand that sometimes it's your higher self is actually there putting you through an experience of pain, whether it's losing your job or the people in your life, or whether it's an illness. And it's almost like a slap round the face to say, it's time to wake up. You came here, your soul embodied in this body, and it's got a mission. And it's like, you're just like everyone else, you're a bit asleep. You're just doing what you need to do, doing the 9 to 5, getting the car, getting the mortgage, having the kids, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, which is all great. That's life. That's what you need to do. You need to experience life, but there's something else for you to do. And I think that's what I see it's doing. It's waking you up, and there's always a way through it. Definitely. So yeah. And now when it happens, I call in my dragons and I get them to fly me out the well. So I find it still happens. I still get hit by it, but I've like landed at the bottom. It's like, right, time to pull me out, and I come out a lot quicker. But it still takes a day or two sometimes, and it feels like it's more of an upgrade of the system. It's a releasing. It causes you to release something. You're like, okay, I need to look at this, and you look at it in detail, and you're not afraid to look at it. When you first have a dark night, so it's scary. You're like, oh, I want to hide under the duvet. And the more you do it, the more you stand up with courage and you face it. I've had one where a gorilla came into me. It was a huge gorilla, and I was like, "What's this?" And my whole body was like, "I'm going to die if I face this gorilla," and I didn't for like a whole night, sort of just sitting there hiding from it in my mind. And then I just got, I thought, oh, I need to call in my guide. So I called in the dragons, like, stand with me. And the gorilla came back. So I faced it, and then it just shrunk. And it went down to this little diddly thing, and it walked away. And I was like, it was just a fear I had to face. I'm not even sure what the fear was. Yeah, maybe the fear of death or the fear of being beaten up or something. I don't know. But yeah.
That's so interesting. Thank you, Kevin, for sharing that. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure people listening will too, because you know, sometimes it can be, as you said, it's very scary when you don't know what's happening, and your first, I consider them as redirections as well. It's like your soul is like, all right, we've kind of been waiting for you to do this, but it doesn't look like you're getting the message. We've thrown you a few red flags, but you're really not getting it. What we're trying to say is come over this way, leave all that behind. It's not getting you anywhere. Come over this way. And it does. It feels really awful because it's so, you don't know what's going on, but it's out of your comfort zone, right? It's out of your routine. It's out of what you know. But what you don't realize is what you know is not is not helping you.
Yeah, exactly.
Make that shift. And I think, you know, especially with what you were saying, with it still happens. It's not that we don't need redirection or to be shifted, but it gets so much easier when you realize that you can go, okay, yep, I've let some things build up. I've let some old patterns come back in, or some old fears sneak back in, and my soul is trying to say, hey, you don't need to do that, and it's holding you back. And we have to go through that again. So yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that. It's so important for people to hear. So tell us a little bit about how, because you're not the only one that can have dragons helping you, are you?
Of course. No, it's not. I'm not unique.
Can you tell us a little bit about how other people can access their dragon?
Yeah, I mean, a while back, the dragons have a little conflab with my dragons, and we go on shamanic journeys, and they were like, we want our riders. I'm like, you want your what? We want our riders. I was like, okay, fair enough. What does that actually mean? They said, and they were telling me that in the past, distance past, that humans have long forgotten, you know, millennia ago, maybe in a different generation of humanity. Some people say we're in the 5th generation. We actually, maybe it was in Atlantis times or something, but we and dragons and all of the spirits of Earth that are here that we don't necessarily see anymore, we were one. We communicated, we saw each other, we worked in unison, we helped each other, and we looked after the planet, and you know, we were kind to the planet. And they were like, we need our riders back. I was like, okay, what do you want me to do? They said, we want you to have a webinar where you show people how you go on shamanic journeys and how you meet us. I was like, okay, fair enough. So I did that in January, was it 2020? Yeah, January 2020 or February 2020. And I recorded it and I put it on one of those platforms called Kajabi, and it allows anyone to go on it. And I think we're up to about 500 people have actually met their dragon, which is amazing. It's a gift that I gave away to the world because they said give it away, don't charge. I was like, oh, I could have charged a few quid for that, yeah. But I love it because I every other day or so I'll get a message from someone saying, oh, I met my dragon, it's called this and it's green, and I've gone flying with it, and it's now helping me with this, and it's removed this fear, and I'm feeling amazing, and it's beautiful. So yeah, there is something there, and it's part of my gift as well. And it's also available on a website that will take you there. It's called meetyourdragons with an s.com, and that will take you there. And yeah, it's a freebie for the world. And the dragons are, as I say, looking for their riders. You don't have to necessarily ride them. They're also looking for that connection, and they're very powerful, very wise beings. And they're there as a spirit guide as well. So some people have them as their body protectors, you know, their guardian angels, or maybe they're just there because they want to assist you at the moment. And as I said, for myself, they give me courage. And I find that I've got those moments where we all have it. We have fears. You know, you want to take that step. You want to do that jump. You want to leave your corporate job, or you want to leave a relationship, or whatever it is. Then you can call them in, and they've got immense courage that they can lend you. So yeah, they're a beautiful energy to work with, and they're quite funny as well. You know, we all think that dragons, because you know, like witches are bad, dragons are bad. They're not. They're beautiful beings, both of them, and they're not going to steal the maidens and put them in the castle. And they're not going to steal all your gold, and they're not going to burn your village down. That's just patriarchy that has drawn this idea so that you're afraid of them. But they're actually, you know, beautiful beings. And people say to me, "Is there a way of explaining dragons?" And well, they're like humans, but wiser and more powerful and stronger. But they've all got that individual personality. And I say that they can be quite jokey and quite funny. And I've been on a few journeys where there was loads of little dragons, and I was like saying hello to them. Next minute, they're all tossing me around like I'm a ball. I was like, whoa, whoa. But it was just fun. Yeah, they're just joking around, and then you're like, so please stop, I'm gonna be ill, and they will. Yeah. Anyone can meet them, and they're waiting for you.
So let's see, what else can you tell us about the free gift that you do have for everyone besides the Meet Your Dragon?
Yeah, I've got a lovely little list here because I make sure I remember it. So I've got so it's healings and meditations. That will, when you're in that moment of the dark night of the soul, then that's when you need some positive input just to help you keep moving through it. So I put these all together. Then they're not just mine; they're from other people as well, and they'll move you through. So I've got a chakra cleanse. I've got a 4 elements shamanic ritual. I've got a meditation in a tranquility garden, which is gorgeous. You go to this garden, and it's just so peaceful, and it just takes you out of the darkness. There's some drum healing. There's my drum behind us. That's the energy from that is just absolutely gorgeous. And then if you really want some sort of ancestral healing, there's some there from a friend who's got Akashic Records reading, and I do a shamanic one. Another friend of mine, Rosemary from Sweden, does this angelic healing, and she calls in the angels. And again, I do that lots myself. It's just so beautiful. Another lady who's French, now lives in Australia. She calls herself the wise and wild woman. She does a shamanic healing, and that's beautiful. And then there's another one from Rosemary from Sweden, which is the etheric gardens, and it's a bit like the tranquility, but it's even better than my one. And then there's the dragons. Meet Your Dragons. It's the dragon portal.
Oh my goodness, Kevin, that's amazing. Thank you so much. That's a huge swag of free gifts that I hope everyone takes. And I can attest to Kevin's gifts and things that he meditations. They're absolutely amazing. I have experienced them myself. So yes, we'll make sure that there'll be links below that people can sign up and access those free gifts. And then of course, just, you know, if someone wanted to come to you for a healing, what kind of services do you offer?
Yeah, I do single healings or triple healings. I prefer it, not because I'm after the money, but I prefer to have 3 healings with a person. That just gives me an idea of their energy and what needs to be done. I get a chance to talk to their higher self. So you can go to EnglishMystic.co.uk. You can find me there, or English Mystic anywhere on social media. I know there's so many of them. I try to keep up with it. I mean, even on TikTok, but you don't see me dancing.
You definitely are out there, which is great. So yes, we'll have all those details down on this site for you so that you can follow Kev. And again, yes, I can vouch for how fabulous the healings are. I've experienced them myself. It was very appreciative and I loved it. Yeah, fantastic. So thank you, Kevin. I guess in closing, is there anything, you know, sometimes people have a few takeaways. Is there anything that we're going to take away 1 or 2 things from this session? What would you be your advice or your takeaways for people?
I would say that we all go through a dark night of the soul, and the thing is to remember to keep moving. Yeah, and that's the important thing, is just to keep moving. It will sometimes feel like it's going on forever, but there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. And use my resources and other people's resources to just to give you that lift, so that you don't sit too deep in the darkness, because there's always light. And if you call in your dragons, it'll just come and drag you out. So do that.
Excellent. Thank you. That's fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much, Kevin. We'll close off. And yeah, thanks again. Make sure you follow Kev and get all the details and the free gift stuff below. Thanks again for your time. We'll see you on social media.